Thank you again for having us here and being part of this. I do want to kick off by introducing our state rep and also school committee member, Mr. Manny Cruz. I'll just say this. Again, one of the reasons I wanted to come to Salem is I had a history or experience in other gateway cities in expanding pre-K, and I wanted to come to a community that was invested in this work. And Mr. Cruz was a big part of that. He was on the school committee when I got hired. They made it very clear they were going to double down on early education here in Salem. I also am proud to say that he's going to single-handedly keep us employed with his own children coming up through the system, and so we got to keep him happy because we want those cruises coming through in the coming years. So I'll just turn it over to Mr. Cruz, who's just a great supporter of our schools, but also the work that we've done in early childhood education.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zrike. And
Representative, can we just move the microphone down closer to you? Thank you. Yeah, yeah. We want all your fans to be able to hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
He doesn't usually need a microphone, this guy.
And thank you, Dr. Zrike, for the kind words. I only have 2 children, by the way, so I'm not going to be able to keep you.
Well, is that it? I mean,
yeah, exactly. But to that end, I just wanted to express my gratitude to the superintendent. I was a part of his hiring committee now almost 4 years ago, and he did hear us loud and clear. Early ed, early ed, early ed. We wanted to create these opportunities because we recognized if there was one thing that was going to equalize literacy rates, the ability of our students to thrive in the classroom, it was that early intervention. I'll say for my part, I stand before you not only a proud graduate of this public school district, but also a proud graduate of Head Start. Growing up in a low-income family household, single-parent household, I know that Head Start program paid many dividends for me, and I likely wouldn't be standing here before you as the state representative and the vice chair of the Salem School Committee. I do want to acknowledge my dear friend Secretary Tutwiler, Commissioner Kershaw, who joined us earlier in the year for a visit here to Salem with your distinguished staff to learn more about our mixed delivery model and the deep partnerships that exist here in Salem. And I couldn't tell you how excited I was not only to welcome you then, but to also see the commitment of both the Secretary and the Commissioner to really thinking about models like Salem and how we could expand them to other areas of the Commonwealth. I do want to recognize that we are joined by another one of my colleagues, School Committee member Veronica Miranda, who's here in the room. Thank you, Member Miranda, for being here. She's been on the committee for a short time, but I think one thing that folks find out right away when you join the committee in Salem is that we're going to talk about early education and our model here. There's a few things that I would just love to raise up and express my gratitude for. So I want to thank the Secretary, Commissioner Kershaw, the board, and Governor Healy for their work around thinking about equitable strategies for increasing access, universal access to early education. This is an equity strategy that's going to pay dividends for the students who need us the most and the families that need us the most. Coming out of the pandemic, when the secretary was the superintendent in the neighboring district, we all saw the tremendous impact that the lack of access to both early education and care was having on our families, and especially those in gateway cities. And so this approach here, to be able to take the investment from fair share, to stand up in our values during a really difficult time in our budget, and to place these new investments, I think is critical. I heard you all loud and clear about reaching out to your legislators. Know that I am on board, and I will still welcome the conversation because I do think that we're going to be heading into some rocky fiscal times, but our commitment to public education, universal pre-K, it cannot waver. If that's any of the lessons that we've learned from the pandemic, that this is a real strategy for ensuring that our kids will learn. So I do think when you all visited the last time, we shared with you some data about the impact that this program was having. I saw it firsthand as a committee member. I saw it during the visit. The incredible staff that are here in Salem have made tremendous strides. And so I think the only other things that I would just raise up as continued food for thought, things for consideration as your legislative and budgetary priorities continue to advance throughout the session, is that as we continue to think about the rates, I want to +1 the importance of increasing those rates because of what they mean for our educators and our professionals who are serving our children and families. We know all the research, all the evidence out there suggests that if we're going to keep folks retained in the early education space, that means we need to compensate them appropriately to build the conditions in which our families are going to continue to have access to seats. And then I think the other piece that I would just make mention of is that as you continue to think about these investments, to think about the other equity levers. And specifically, I want to think about our multilingual learners and our students. I want to thank the Secretary for his continued commitment to equity for all students. And as we think about our multilingual learners in early education, there's a real opportunity for them to become really fluent in 2 languages and starting in pre-K. That is why I'm so excited about the great work that Ms. Smith and Ms. Rogers are leading here in this building and enrolling my daughter in the fall, and then later my son. And then since the Secretary, you raised the point about literacy launch, I can't tell you how excited I am about this. I echo your concerns and your urgency around what we're seeing for our students. 50% of our schools across the Commonwealth, Boston Globe reports that 50% of them have low quality literacy materials and curriculums. And when we think about what that means for our students, I am not going to say that MCAS is the end-all be-all. It is a snapshot in time, but nonetheless, when we look at those scores and we see what's happening with our Black, Latino, low-income students and our multilingual learners, it's an unacceptable situation. So I want to thank the Secretary, the Governor, and really everyone who's advocated for this reinvestment in literacy. I think it's going to be critical as we think about how we move towards the post-pandemic education era. Mr. Secretary, I'm going to quote you: stabilize, transform, and heal. If we're going to do that, I do think one of the things that I would just urge as we continue to go through the process together, you have a partner in me, is that as we think about that stream of funding and that 50% number of districts that are not adopting high quality evidence-based strategies, is to also think about the opportunities for accountability and partnership. How do we ensure that those districts are also adopting the highest quality, scientifically based literacy strategies so that our students who need us the most are not continuing to, suffer through an experience that's not equitable and that is unjust. So I would welcome the opportunities to just work with you and your commissioners on ensuring that as we think about those conditions of funding, that we ensure that districts are operating with fidelity and doing what's in the best interest of children. So you gave me the opportunity to be able to speak, Dr. Zrike, and apologies if I went a little bit over time, but educational equity matters for all of our children, and the investments that the Governor's office and the Secretary have put forward, I think clearly show that our Commonwealth continues to try to be first in the nation when it comes to education, not just for some, but for all. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz, and you can see why we take him along for the show. He's got great enthusiasm and passion for this work that we're trying to do, and we appreciate that. So I just want to open, before I introduce the glamour shot folks in the picture behind you, I just want to just give a little more context, and then we'll pass it along. But we made a strategic decision in Salem to invest our ESSER funding around the launch of a mixed delivery model for pre-K. And some were, we opened classes, additional classes within the Salem Public Schools. And as you'll hear, also we partnered and we leveraged the CPPI funding to involve community partners in that work as well. And you'll learn more about that here. We thought that it was an important investment to make in order for our youth to be school ready, academically, socially, and emotionally. And during COVID, we saw, as many of you did see, families struggling, particularly our Black and brown families struggling with childcare, and we saw the negative impacts of not having consistent, high-quality schooling and childcare for our youngest learners. This community sprang into action, as many communities did around the state, and we have had, in my humble opinion, tremendous success because of the will, the fact that we had space in our system and in our city, the partnerships, and a profound belief amongst the partners and city leaders that early education opportunities are a game changer for young people in this city. So we feel like we have a unique story, and I would just caution that, and some of you mentioned it, every city's context is different. And I think that's really important, having been in a couple of different cities. The path to doing this well depends on the uniqueness of every community. We're excited to tell the Salem story here today, and we're proud of the mixed delivery model where we have more consistency of curriculum, high quality coaching, professional development, better materials, compensating educators better than previously before, and special education supports and student supports for all kinds of learners here. And while, again, every city and community context is different, we do think we have a model that others can learn from, and we hope to be able to inform the work at the state level. So thank you for letting us tell that story. So the people, of course, the superintendent may be able to tell a little bit of the story, but I don't really have any of the answers. So I'm going to defer to people that really do the work every day, and those are the people that are sitting to my right and my left. So I'm just going to introduce the people who, if you really have the specific questions, ask them, don't ask me. To my left, I have our Deputy Superintendent, Kate Carbone, who really has been the point person for the school system in this work. Charity Lizette, how do I say that? Lezama, or I just call you Charity. So, who's the executive director of the Salem YMCA and has been a good partner. We have Celeste Hamilton who's the site director of Salem Community Childcare. We have Tabitha Williams, who's the owner of Ashley's Preschool and Daycare. So you could just a little wave there. Yeah, you got your red on too. Leanne Smith, who's the principal of the school that you're in right now, the Salem Early Childhood Center. And then we have an extraordinary coach. Our CPPI grant coordinator and early learning coach is Shawna Erps, who's been a longstanding Salem Public Schools educator. So they're here to tell the story, and so I'm going to pass it to them.
Okay, which is a lot of slides around introductions, so we'll just buzz through that. So, thank you, Commissioner Kershaw, Board.
Can I just ask you to move that microphone a little closer to you? Thank you.
Yes, Board Chair and Secretary Tutwiler and the entire board for really giving us the opportunity to participate in the CPPI grant. It really has funded some really just dynamic and amazing work, and we are pleased to be here today to tell you a little bit about our story. So I'm going to take you down memory lane a little bit and sort of give some context and background around how we really got started in this work. Back in 2016, Salem joined the By All Means initiative at Harvard, an initiative led by then Secretary of Education Paul Reville at Harvard's Education Redesign Lab. And that initiative was aimed at developing comprehensive systems that focus on child well-being and addressing those factors that impact the opportunity gap and educational outcomes for children, both long-term and short-term. And Salem was really fortunate to participate in that initiative. We participated for about 4 years, and a couple of really important things came out of that work. One was that we did establish a children's cabinet, and on that cabinet we had many leaders from across the Salem community. We had the superintendent and other members of his or her cabinet, whoever was in that seat at the time. The mayor, of course, was a participant in that. We had leaders like Charity and others from community-based organizations. The dean of the School of Education from Salem State was also part of that. So they participated in the By All Means, but also, met as a cabinet to start to think about ways in which they could really move the needle on the experience of children in the city of Salem. And one of the first things that they identified that they wanted to launch was a City Connects initiative. And so that model, and for those of you who may be familiar or not with the City Connects model, it is a systemic approach to addressing out-of-school factors that create inequities and barriers to children's success. And so we launched that model across all of our K-8 schools, and we were the first district in the country to do that. And so what that looked like was we positioned a City Connects coordinator in every school. We partnered with Boston College and leveraged their expertise and resources. But really what that program does is focus on each individual child, not just students at greatest need, of course, prioritizing them, but every child, because every child brings strengths and gifts to the process, but also, can be served in new and interesting ways. So there's, a review process that takes place early in the year, and then the City Connects coordinator serves as a liaison to the community to support families in accessing resources to better serve their children. And so that model is still flourishing in our system and is a hallmark to our student support work. And I know that you learned or discussed a little bit about the CPPI expansion grant, which we are just finalizing our submission for that on Friday, and we will be proposing moving that model down to the pre-K space, so that it's sort of a continuity of work that we started many years ago. So soon after that, early work really focused on getting City Connects up and running in the Salem Public Schools. We did start to turn our sights to pre-K as the next really, opportunity and space for changing outcomes for kids and creating conditions for long-term success. So we were interested in accessing CPPI funds to help us do that. And so we were getting organized, to organize and support cross-collaboration between the public schools and our community-based organizations. We applied early on twice, and they were not successful applications, but we did get feedback, and we heeded that feedback and took it to heart. We were not discouraged. We were committed to this work, and we forged ahead. And we really understood that we needed to pay attention to building an infrastructure so that we had something in place that was going to sustain the work as we moved forward. And so that's what we turned our sights to. And so we started to really think about different ways in doing that. So one of the things that we did do was that we selected a curriculum early on. We used 3 chairs for pre-K here and across our partnership. And so we brought that on. We started to do some joint professional development across the public schools and the community partners. We converted one of our positions. We have a coaching model here in the Salem Public Schools. So rather than asking for another position, we took one of our positions and we converted it to an early learning coach who could support not only our pre-K teachers, but also pre-K teachers in the partner programs with implementing the new curricula. We convened an advocacy group that we and met regularly with. We had members from Strategies for Children, our state representative, state senator, members from DESE. I think Jocelyn joined us a few times, Donna Trainum, and we convened pretty much quarterly to just talk about how to sort of get organized for expanding our work and really focusing on quality. And then, of course, funding was always on the agenda. The most important outcome of that early work was forming the partnership across the Salem Public Schools and the 3 community partners, so the YMCA, Salem Community Childcare, and Ashley's. And that started back then and has only flourished under the CPPI structure. We also did propose and got support from the mayor and the school committee at the time to post for a position that we were calling the director of the Salem Children's Alliance, a position that would sort of straddle the city and the public schools and wake up every day thinking about young children in the city of Salem and what it would take to make them successful. It is a position, and the superintendent was going to talk about this a little later, that sits on the mayor's cabinet, and in that unique seat has the opportunity to help leverage resources from across city departments for an all-kids agenda. And then, of course, we also did leverage ESSER monies quite significantly. For 2 years, we put out a $180,000 RFP to the 3 partners, and, in this idea of braided funding models, did leverage some of those resources to support the partners, in addition to CPPI funds. And part of our concern was, as ESSER sunsets, we no longer have those resources to do that. But we also did leverage ESSER to revitalize our classrooms, make sure that there were lots of books and toys and other kinds of materials to support purposeful play in ways that supports the themes in the curriculum. So finally, into 2022, we did apply for CPPI and we were awarded a grant, and we kind of got into the pipeline, and that was a great day. And so we got that shorter grant to start, and then we are in our second year of the 3-year grant and poised quite happily to be ready to apply for the expansion grant, which is due on Friday. So just a little bit about our milieu. So we call ourselves the Salem Pre-K Partnership, and that consists of 19 classrooms presently across all of, oopsie, sorry. I went way ahead. Okay. 19 classrooms across the Salem Public Schools as well as our community partners. So in Salem Public Schools, we have our Early Childhood Center that's led by Leanne Smith, and she'll be talking to you specifically about what's been happening in their program as a result of our partnership with the CPPI grant. We have 10 classrooms in her site. And then, as the superintendent mentioned, we leveraged ESSER to launch 4 additional pre-K classrooms, 2 at our Bates Elementary School and 2 at Horace Mann. And then with our partners, we have 2 CPPI supported classrooms at Salem Community Childcare, 2 at the YMCA, and 1 at Ashley's Preschool. We do have an interesting opportunity. We have 2 other organizations that do serve 4-year-olds co-located in our building. So we have Pathways for Children that I believe have like 8 or 9 classrooms, and they're located at the Horace Mann School. And then we have Angela's preschool that has 1 preschool class, pre-K classroom, and that is located at the Salem High School. And so we have invited both of them to participate in the pre-K expansion grant, and they have both accepted, and so we're excited about that. We will have a total of 22 additional pre-K classrooms in CPPI if this goes through, because the YMCA is also interested in adding a 3rd classroom. So we will have 5 partners and 22 classrooms. And currently right now, without those additional classrooms, at the top of the slide, you can see that we have about 300, our kindergarten enrollment is about 315, and we served 170 4-year-olds in our CPPI classrooms. So we're about 54% of the kids are coming out of these classrooms where we're really hyper-focused on quality and really upping our game around great experiences for kids.
And if the expansion grant goes through, Kate, what % will you be at?
We'd be around 67 if all of the kids are 4-year-olds. I don't know exactly what the dynamics are in the 3 additional classrooms. And we are also, the superintendent did mention, we are adding through our operational budget a dual language pre-K classroom here at the Bentley School, which is our dual language program. It's in its 3rd or 4th year of upscaling into a bilingual Spanish language program.
So just a couple notes before we get into the more specifics. The structure has to be there, and somebody mentioned this before, like communities have to have the infrastructure to do this work. And you can see on the chart, this is our organizational structure that does include the work on the school side with our leadership team. Again, I want to reiterate how supportive the school committee has been in this work. And the mayor, who's the chair of the committee, and you know who our former mayor is, because I'm sure you talk with her quite a bit, Lieutenant Governor Driscoll, who was just a fierce proponent for this work, and that's carried on to this administration. And then we've organized our team here to have a principal of the Early Childhood Center, and then our special education director and our director of student supports are firmly, we see pre-K as our work. This is not independent. And I think some districts don't don't see anything before kindergarten as somebody else's job or somebody else's work. We see this as an important part of our responsibility. Then on the city side, we're really excited that we have a new director of the Salem Children's Alliance. Sarah Roy is somewhere in the audience. Thinks this might be her second week or of work, and so we don't want to overwhelm her yet. But we're excited to have somebody to kind of bring this together because we value our partners. And I've learned my lesson. I've said this before. I used to just want to take all the kids. That's not, as a school system leader, that's not possible. I don't think that's necessarily fair. It doesn't meet the needs of all families, and we've got very strong community organizations in Salem. And so, but we do need help kind of organizing ourselves and coordinating ourselves. And so there's a lot of work that happens with kids outside of the schools as well. And so having someone be the director of the Children's Alliance who not only works with the schools, but works with all organizations that work with young children in the city is really important. So we're excited about that. And then this pre-K partnership, which is a blended model, it's a mixed delivery model, is really a school district and community partner work. And so we feel like the infrastructure is there, but we do have work to do. And I'll just speak to that if you want to switch the slides. Some of the opportunities we see and the challenges are, we still want to, we don't have a single point of entry right now. We really struggle with matching families to what they really need. Every program offers slightly different things, which is great, but it's too challenging to navigate as a parent right now, and it's sort of hit or miss. And we try to help families with our in our enrollment center, but we're not there yet. And we know that some parents need the resources that the community partners provide. Some like having the school setting because they have older children in the schools. Some offer transportation, which we don't, and so that we have to still figure that out. We're also working with the city. I spoke to the mayor about this today, of creating a welcome center that would be for all families, where our enrollment would be center would move to where most of our families live, right in downtown Salem, would be the point of entry for families. And it would be more than just like an assignment enrollment center, but it would be truly a family wraparound center where families could get information on all resources in the city. And so we're hopefully going to be opening that next year. So that's part of our plan in becoming more organized as a city. We also, we opened classrooms with ESSER funds. We were below minimum aid. We're now struggling to figure out how to fund. We have a plan now in order to fund it. But it's challenging to be able to continue to provide funding, especially when pre-K students don't count toward the full allotment of students as part of Chapter 70. It does not cover. You can say you add students, but adding one pre-K student does not, the funding that comes with it is not sufficient to provide them with the education they deserve, especially when you talk about multilingual learners, you talk about students with disabilities, and making sure that we have ample resources for them. And our partner programs don't have the resources necessary to boost teacher salaries, provide tuition relief to the extent that they have some excellent educators. Unfortunately, sometimes they come to us because we pay more, and we don't want to be fighting with one another for precious talent that exists. Obviously, I'm preaching to the choir. That's obviously something to help our partners. They've gotten a boost in terms of materials and resources and things like that. But salaries is a big part of what we know we need to do. And so I think for us, it's we're very excited about the access, the improved quality, but we have to continue to work on our coordination and our coherence as a system in order to get to where we want to be. So with that, I'll turn it over to other folks who can talk to you about what this looks like day to day in our schools and in our partner organizations.
One more slide for me.
Oh, I'm back to,
One more for
okay.
me. So this
was
is
going
just
this way.
an overview to, Jocelyn earlier narrated that there are the three priority strands in the CPPI grant, and so it's no surprise that our work that we've been doing tightly aligns to that, and we've organized this in that structure. And so I actually did have a handout, I don't know if in that blue folder, because the type is really little, but these are some of the things that we've been really focused on. And strand one is the work around supporting tuition relief for families as well as boosting the educator salaries. They're doing extra work, and they're working long days already, and so this is really important part of the grant. And Jocelyn also referred to as the district, sort of being the structure where the money sort of flows out. We have a really good system where they invoice us monthly, and we, our grants office, disperses the funds right to the partners so that those funding sources are there. I would say strand 2 is where we've really sort of upped our game and done a lot of work. I told you already that we did adopt a curriculum. We adopted other assessments and screening tools. So we're using 3 cheers for kindergarten, pre-K, as the curriculum, my IGD as a benchmark assessment, so we can monitor the growth in numeracy and literacy skills. We do the class assessments twice a year, so we hire out outside rater who comes in, and that data has been really, really helpful. We sit with the educators, both at the partner organizations and in our classrooms, to review that data. They're really interested in it. We've used it to help establish professional practice goals at the beginning of the year. So that's been super, super helpful for us. We also have been able to, as I said, do joint professional development. We ran a course this year, or it was like a 4-part series on the science of reading. I know we're all like really, focused on, learning more about, best practices in literacy, and so that really is important at the pre-K level. So for both our partner teachers and our teachers, we partnered with the Hill for Literacy, and we've been doing that training during some joint professional development. So that's been a real highlight for us, is that piece. And then we hired an additional early learning coach. So we have 2 coaches, Shawna and Jenny Baez, who manage, divide the classrooms up and make sure that they're connecting. These are 2 educators who have pre-K and kindergarten experience, and I would characterize them as teacher whisperers. The teachers see them coming and they light up. It's a real wonderful relationship between the coaches and the teachers, very supportive, because this is hard work, and but they're doing a great job. And then in strand 3, this is, to Jocelyn's point earlier too, like we wrote our original grant across all 3 strands, and that was a heavy lift. I think we really did our best work in strand 1 and 2. Strand 3, we got to start, but I think we're really going to accelerate our work there under the expansion grant. And the things that we're proposing. But what we did do is we wanted to make sure services were out in the programs. And so based on our feedback from our community leaders, they told us that speech and language was really important. So we've hired a speech and language assistant who's working under the supervision of one of our speech and language pathologists. And she is working out in the community, delivering services in the community classrooms, doing groups, and so forth. And we have some ideas of how she can do some more prevention-related work under the expansion grant. We also hired a full-time, because one of the other things that programs told us is they were really struggling with student behavior, dysregulation, children who were really, having some hard times. And so we hired a full-time BCBA, which is really sort of unheard of that we were able to. It is one of our Salem Public School staff who we knew was exceptional. And so, I think much to the chagrin of the school that she left to do this work, but happily for the partnership, she is, working, and she worked over the summer. Both of these staff are able to work over the summer. We pay them a little extra through stipends through the grant to be on site in the partner programs to provide those services. So that's what we've been up to. So now we're going to turn on to we're starting to collect some early indicators of impact. We had a whole bunch of slides, and then we narrowed it down to 2 just to give you a little glimpse, and Shawna's going to talk about those.
So this slide, this slide just shows the results of our universal, some of the subtests of our universal screening assessment related to early literacy. We also do screen within the area of early numeracy, but this one just aligns a little bit more tightly to the slide that you're going to see next. We do this screener in all of our CPPI and public school classrooms, so we are using the same screener. You can see that the number of students in the green from the beginning of the year to the end of the year is growing, and that we are closing the gap for the students that are in the gray and the red from the fall to the spring. So we are working with, in our public school classrooms and our community partner school classrooms, to look at those outcomes for kids, right? So, you know, Steve often says that we've expanded seats, and Kate reminds him that they are quality seats. And so it's my goal to create quality, equity, and consistency across however many classrooms we have, because we really are a great team and we work really well together. After we do the assessments, we meet with the directors. So I go over and meet with the directors. We review them kind of from a program perspective. That was really helpful. CPPI actually built that in, so then it makes you make that time to make that step happen. We meet with the directors. We look at the results for some overall trends within each program. Our programs are all very different from one another. The needs of their students, you know, the level of comfort and experience of their teachers. So we review it as a program level, and then we also meet with the teachers. And so then we look at, like, what does this mean for instruction, like big picture instruction using the curriculum, but also like what are some of the kids that we really want to make sure that we're looking at in the fall, and how are we trying to close those gaps for them as soon as we can. We also have, which I didn't realize was quite like out of the norm, but we do use the same curriculum. So we are using three cheers for pre-K across all of our classrooms, which has been really helpful in having like common language when we come together for professional development. So we're also very lucky. When I'm on some of the CPPI calls, they're like, how do you make that happen? But we meet for
That was going to be my question, by the way, of how you make that happen.
It seems to be a popular one. We are able to meet almost monthly. In year one, we did meet monthly. I try to be very responsive. I know that all of our programs are different. We were coming back from COVID. Staffing was a challenge. And so it was really hard to pull the teachers from their programs, and the directors were super great about getting to them as often as they could. But we were meeting monthly. That felt like it was a little maybe too much. So then we pared it back, and we did it maybe 4 times the following year. And then the feedback was like, oh, I think they're pretty consistently staffed right now. You'll hear in future slides, our teachers have stayed for 2 years in our community partner programs. So we don't have the same turnover they don't have the same turnover that I was seeing in some of the programs when we first got up and going. So we're building capacity over time, which has been great. So this year we landed like around 6 or 7. We always start together for common professional development before school starts. Typically that is related to the class. We do use the class observation tool in all of our classrooms. So they're all being rated sort of according to the same criteria to ensure that we are providing quality in all of our classrooms. There's lots of domains. And so to really track growth, as Jocelyn referred to earlier, is challenging because there's lots of, and it's down to the decimal point. And so we've approached it by looking at teacher growth. And we have seen pretty substantial, we focused this year on concept development in the instructional support domain, because our other domains, we were kind of making some progress, and that one was a challenge across all of our locations, which they did confirm is normal and makes sense. So we've been able to use some of our joint professional development to sort of support teachers in what does that look like in classrooms when it's being done well and when it's at a high quality level. We also, as Kate alluded to, we used 4 of our half days to participate in the science of reading, the first 4 modules that are designed for early childhood. So they're the early childhood ones, which are newer versions. We did them virtually so that our partners were able to stay in the programs. And that really supported some common shifts in understanding around how to support students' early literacy and also how to better support the kiddos who are struggling. And so that's given us some common language. It's allowed for common modeling. We do partner with Hill for Literacy. The way that we kind of got creative is that she's currently in our public school classroom, so she'll model a lesson, once a month for teachers. And then our other early learning coach goes to the community partners and models the same lesson, so that when Sharon then talks about something in our common professional development, again, we have an equitable experience as teachers. So we've been using, some of that to drive our professional development. We've also we survey the teachers, so we ask them, what are some things that you could use more support with? That is where the social emotional and self-regulation theme started to emerge in our preschool set post-COVID. So we have been able to provide some professional development around that, and then we were actually able to put some staff, into the community partner programs over the summer and this school year to really support the teachers. The shared curriculum resource, I think for me, the teacher feedback is that the professional development has been the biggest game changer for them. So consistently between community partner schools and our public school teachers, they feel that the professional development has been what's helped them and supported them the most. I also think that being able to do that around a shared curriculum resource has been really helpful because we know that we're developing their knowledge, through themes, helping them figure out how the world works while developing their content understanding, while also really thinking about ways to integrate those themes and being thoughtful around purposeful play and balancing that with really being data-driven around what our kids need and how are we matching what they need to what they're showing us.
Shawna, can I just ask, the curriculum alignment was, and I think it was 5 partners, right? Like, was everybody already using the same so you all met to figure out how to align, okay.
We did. When I came aboard, one of the first things that I did was we had a few curriculum resources like sort of be presented to a group. We had someone from Salem State there. There's not a lot of options. When you think about, like, I was a former literacy coach, the scope of literacy programs, that you could be choosing from is much more vast. 3 Cheers for Pre-K is actually the revised OWL curriculum, which is a curriculum, people start nodding their heads when they hear of that one, is revised, the revised OWL. But no, we did that as part of year 1.
Because I'm just thinking about, you mentioned common language, professional development, you almost create like a community of practice, right? And grounding on the same curriculum, if you didn't do that, that would be really hard to do, right? Because you're kind of not resonating with what your day-to-day is versus being able to resonate and build that community of practice is just powerful, yeah.
It was very helpful. We spent the first year unpacking that curriculum. So what are the parts of the day? What do centers look like? What does a schedule look like when you're using that curriculum? What are the materials that you have? And then we were also able to use funding to purchase materials that more strongly aligned to the themes. So then we were able to outfit classrooms with more books that build content knowledge around the themes that they're learning. I think also being a prior kindergarten teacher, how, kindergarten is not the kindergarten, doesn't look the same as it did when I started in education 25 years ago. In that push, our kids lost, there was an assumption that they were going to get these skills somewhere, that then they came to kindergarten and they didn't necessarily have them. Things like being able to play with language, rhyming, beginning sounds, and alliteration. There was a gap. And so we've spent a lot of time, one of our instructional priorities has been around phonological awareness. And so not pushing higher things sooner, but what do they really need with oral language and vocabulary and phonological awareness? Those were the modules that we started with science of reading. So we what are elements of effective instruction? What does brain research tell us about how young kids learn? Oral language and vocabulary and really getting kids talking and phonological awareness. So it aligned beautifully to what we knew our kids kind of needed.
Yeah, I'm thinking about even the multi-language learners, right, coming out of pre-K into kindergarten knowing 2 languages, how powerful that is just for lots of reasons. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
And then our next slide shows, this is our, we adopted STAR Early Literacy as our universal screener here in Salem and STAR Reading. So this slide shows the results of the early literacy results for kindergarten. The first graph shows the scores before our first cohort of kiddos moved up. So as Kate said, we've sent approximately 170 students. You can see the increase in proficiency from the year before we sent our kids up to the year we sent our kids up grew 13%, with being at or above grade level on those early literacy skills, which was a gain of 13%. And overall, they ended that year at 70%. We're now working with our kindergarten teachers. They have rolled up to first grade, our first grade teachers and soon to be second grade teachers, to adjust their expectations for kids who are coming in looking much different than what they have gotten in the past. And they really need to be prepared for that because they're sort of have an expectation. I'm like, oh, wait till they get here. Like they know lots of things. And so we've been working to make sure that they're aware that there is a shift. And that shift is going to keep working its way up through the grades. In addition to Teacher Whisperer, I live and die by data because it's the only way that I know who needs what, like which teachers need which support. What teachers, need some support in quality of feedback while others have got that down. It's the same with our kiddos. And so I've been informally sort of tracking them because I want to see how they fare, throughout. We have been able to partner with our IT department much better. They are using the online screening tool that we're using, like we've generated accounts. We were able to push apps to their iPads. Everyone has the same, that goes through IT, but their kiddos were also given SASITs. And so we have a way now to track them longitudinally in our information system beyond just what I can do in my Google spreadsheet, to really look at the impact of the work over time. And that's my favorite picture from our last visit. Our littlest on her tippy toes.
Great.
I didn't know that was going to be in there. I'm actually wearing the exact same thing. I do have more ties.
Sorry.
All right, so now we're going to hear from each program leader about what this work has meant in their specific context. So to Leanne, who is the principal at our Salem Public Schools Early Childhood Center.
Thank you. Salem Public schools are excited to share successes in the following areas, but as I sit here and think, I could have more and more and more slides because there's just so many things that we're excited about. As you've heard a lot about, we have 3 Cheers for Pre-K as our curriculum. This is our 3rd year using it, and I'm really excited to say at this point, I feel like it's fully implemented. Students are across the board being engaged in instruction using 3 Cheers for Pre-K. We've also supplemented, it's a really solid, great thematic program, but we've used some CPPI money to supplement and buy things like books. So we've looked at the titles in 3 Cheers for Pre-K and the themes and bought books that mirror those themes, mostly along the lines of Windows and Mirrors books. So we've written a lot of interactive read-aloud lessons to support that. So, but also using the 3 Cheers for Pre-K, we've developed assessments that are based on the high priority standards and skills that we've identified from that curriculum. We use those assessments and collect information, and we do some deep dives into data-driven instruction to guide our differentiated instruction in small groups and in what Tier 2 looks like and what reteaches look like. And in that area, we've used a lot of CPPI money to buy materials to supplement that small group instruction that we're doing. So we have all this great data, and now we really can pinpoint what we're using for each small group or each child or even a reteach of the whole group with different materials. we feel right now that we're able to fully implement our instructional priorities for the year. Like I said, through small group instruction to deliver that differentiated instruction, develop phonemic awareness and phonological awareness skills. It's so exciting to walk into classrooms right now and see the materials that kids have access to in their small groups. And it's just, there's an element of joy in there because of that. We've increased our student discourse through the use of interactive read-alouds, routines for turn and talk, and purposeful play. So, it was like holiday central here for a while with purposeful play, with materials just coming in. And I don't know who was more excited, the teachers or the children or me, but it was really, really great to see that we're able to incorporate the theme with really high quality materials, and purposeful play and instruction are really happening sort of side by side and incorporated into one, and that's really because of the materials that we have. We've heard a lot about professional development. I say this every time I stand in front of all of the teachers in Salem and with our partners. It's an amazing thing to stand in front of 50 or so educators, all there in one room for Salem Public Schools, working towards success for 4-year-olds. So that's really been a game changer for us. And also, the use of, we have iPads now that were bought with CPPI money, and we're doing Math Shelf. So our students are exposed to iPads and Math Shelf quite a bit. And that is also really something to see, these little 3- and 4-year-olds that are accessing math curriculum online, and we're starting to see an increase in our math data because of that.
I think we saw that, Secretary, when we were
Yeah, we
here for
did,
a visit
yeah.
at the community childcare.
All right. Ashley's.
You're great with the mic.
Tabitha Williams.
Thanks. So at Ashley's, we're able to engaging themes for learning that also allows for teacher creativity. And so the teacher that's in the classroom, Brianna, she was able to take my original philosophy of children learn through play and combine it with the 3 cheers, and just has come up with some even more purposeful play activities for the kids to learn. And we're using the My IGDs now, and so she's able to take that information and learn what the kids actually lacked in and provide the activities needed to increase the My IGDs outcome. We can better meet the needs of all the children through combining with the CPPI. With that, we have a parent who was private pay, and now she was able to get the discount for her child. And with that, she was able to give swim lessons, and she was able to attain a pass for museums now, whereas her child was having some difficulties in class. She's able to take her out and put her in these other activities that just made her blossom, and now she's able to do more with interacting with her other peers.
Oh, that's so awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tabitha.
Let me get you. Thank you. Super happy to be here and talk about the impact that the CPPI program has had for the Salem YMCA and the Salem community. There's a couple bullet points up there, but I'm just going to focus on 2. One of them is the teacher retention. I think one of the board members that left, she was talking about added seats. I think it's important to remember that sometimes we've had classrooms that are sitting empty with empty seats because we don't have teachers. And that's a real struggle in community-based organizations sometimes, is being able to attract and then retain teachers. The additional money that we're able to provide to our teachers because of this grant has allowed us to have that teacher retention that is so important, that not only increases the quality because of that seniority as they develop the skills, but it also keeps classrooms open. I think the second piece is really that funding that supports the families that are participating in these programs. The quote that Tabitha shared, I get to hear a lot as I pass along these savings to our families. If you think about the income levels that our current subsidies support, and then the amount of money that you'd have to make in a household to support 2 kids in childcare, there's a big gap in there that supposedly we tell families, well, you should be able to afford this, but it really does put families in a position where they have to make hard choices for their kids, and then put them in the positions where when a car breaks down, that really impacts your ability to pay your bills. So the ability for us to pass along these savings to families has made a huge impact. For the preschool families that are in our program, 100% of them are getting some kind of subsidy, whether it's a government subsidy from income eligible slot or voucher slot, YMCA financial assistance, or the CPPI financial assistance. To say that 100% of our families are receiving some kind of assistance means that they're able to use that money to support other parts of their lives, which is so critical when we think about the economic impact of affordable childcare. So, other bullet points up there, our teachers are super happy with the professional development that they're getting, and there's a quote from one of our teachers there.
Great. And Celeste.
Hi. So, yes, we've also been able to retain our teachers throughout this grant. Just like Charity said, being able to offer the educators more money, but through this, it keeps the staff on. So that's been a good incentive. And also, the students have had access to the curriculum. So the shared curriculum has been really great. Having the teachers understand the curriculum and the language, and when they do go to the trainings, they feel a part of, the education and the academic part of it. So that's been great. Teachers have the resources from these from the curriculum, and they have the option to be creative through the activities. And it just like she shared, Ashley, seeing it in the classroom, seeing the teachers, reflect that with the students and offer, those different resources through the activities. We also look at the AD data with the coaches and Shawna, having the teachers being able to speak to them one-on-one about that and helping them and guide them through that has been very helpful with the students and throughout the whole process. And can I see behind? The professional development, as I said, has been very helpful. The teachers have gained a lot of new skills through the training at the professional development. They're much more confident now when they come back to the classrooms, using the class data, understanding how that works, and using that language in the class. I can hear the language from the staff now, understanding using that the class and the language, and just having that experience of understanding, like making that relationship between the data, using the class and bringing it back into the classroom. The language is used much more often now. I'm getting flustered.
Doing great.
One of the things, going back to, I think what's important is that the leadership collaboration, I think, is a missing piece, and is very important. Being able to help the parents and guide the parents. We do get parents that come to us with questions on, well, how do I do this? Where do I go for this? And I think that's a very important piece, and I think it'll be helpful to all of us to be able to implement that when that happens. And the other thing also that I do get feedback from my educators is just being acknowledged and understanding that the educators in early childhood programs are treated very similar to teachers, because they're doing a lot of the same work. Now more work and having to do assessments and things like that. So that's some of the feedback I get from my educators, just being treated, equally and understood,
Invested in, and invested in, yeah.
Do you have any questions?
Just in,
Thank you, Celeste, yeah.
Just in, thank you very much to our partners. And in closing, you know, I love this picture. This is, you know.
I want to
you're
hang
ever
out
having
with
a
these
bad-
three. They look like they're.
I want to
yeah.
find out, yeah. Whenever you're having a bad day, or you know, the best place to go is to our pre-K classrooms. And, you know, there's so much joy. I'm sure on Valentine's Day, even more joy. But I hope you get a sense, a snapshot of the work that we're doing. I don't think we have it all figured out, but I'm really excited about the path that we're on to try to really be a universal and not just access, but quality programming for young people in the city. And we do think we have a model that is working for Salem, and we just have to continue to develop the model. We're very appreciative of the support that we've received. We're very interested to find out what this all means about universal, you know, pre-K and gateway cities and how that plays out. But if we can be a support to other communities on our journey, you know, we may be just a little further ahead, but we know we haven't arrived yet, and we look forward to all the discussion around the state that's going to come around what I think is a missing. You know, I think we all agree can get better across the state of Massachusetts if we're able to better serve families, particularly families of color and traditionally marginalized families who desperately need high quality access and at no cost. I don't think families should have to worry, and too many of our families have to worry, you know, about finding quality care at no cost in their communities that allows them to work. These programs are game changers for young people and their family, not to mention the impact that it's going to have on our schools as we look at performance and achievement as the students come through the grades. So thank you very much. And you know, I don't know how much time you have, but certainly take any questions that might
Thank you
arise.
all for taking the time. And Tabitha, on one of your slides, it says we can better meet the needs of all children. And I think that's ultimately the goal. And I just want to say thank you because knowing a little bit of this and hearing some of the anxieties about where we are on this, the expansion, you all are naming all those anxieties, right? And trying to work through them. And so just want to thank you for the leadership that each of you are bringing to the conversation from your respective seats, because it is what will make it stronger. And it does feel like something that always needs to live in kind of continuous improvement. And it sounds like you all are doing that through data. And I'm just also just the community of practice that you're building. I see those retention rates on those teachers, and I've got to think that they're really feeling a part of something bigger than what they're doing every day because of what you all are doing. And so thank you. And thank you for your commitment to your own learning on how to continue to do it better. So we'll open it up to the board or for questions or comments.
Just thank you very much. Very impressive. I have a wondering. So for the districts that may not be at the level that Salem's at, is there any resources through EEC that they like, so how they can get in touch with them or, you know, work with them to get to that place? Because that was amazing. Your presentation was amazing.
Right, don't we want to share, we want to like,
Yeah.
to spread the
Like,
word.
yeah, for those districts that are maybe hesitant to apply or
Yeah.
that aren't quite there yet, like how do they get?
I may ask Jocelyn to
Yeah.
come back and take that question too, because we are trying to think through sort of a technical assistance, and I spoke more about this earlier too, which is like, I think we've been in sort of a flexibility, letting things run, and even hearing a couple things today, I'm thinking about the curriculum piece where we've let people really kind of be loose, and maybe we, you know, so we are really thinking about a joint technical assistance with DESE too. Sorry, Jocelyn, go ahead.
No. I mean, I think you've really said it. But as we work to get the word out about these opportunities, I think sharing this type of information and the opportunity to bring people together, those that are interested with those that have been doing the work for a while, is going to be a very important part of what we do.
And it seems like folks will be able to sort of, leapfrog maybe some of some of the challenges by standing on your shoulders and the successes you've had.
We have hosted some communities here already. I do know of another gateway city that has been here in the last year to talk with us. And so, yeah, whatever we can
Calls
offer.
after today too.
Again, I will reiterate, it's very different in every city.
Absolutely.
But there are certainly aspects that can be learned.
In other initiatives that we've done sort of like guided practice visits where, you know, maybe 3 or 4 communities come, we have a set agenda, they get to hear maybe some of the folks from, who are at the table go into the classrooms. We've had instances where we've released the teachers to then come sit on a panel while so they get to get information from a lot of different places and stakeholders in the work so that they can, because you got to think about this 360. And we would be happy to stage something like that where, there were a couple of panels, people from the classroom, people supporting the classroom, and, an opportunity to go into the classrooms.
It will be important for us to play, as we get clearer on the model, having learned from you and your colleagues across the state who are kind of on the journey, to be more, to give you support in doing that. So you're not fielding calls and we're expecting you to do that, but there's some partnership with us where we're providing that technical assistance and maybe delivering some of the experts at times and locations that can not be disruptive to you. So
The other thing I just want to call out that I really appreciate about the governor's budget is that it foresees a steady, ongoing path to entry into this grant. We've, in the past, had a period where we have a set number of districts that are implementing, and then we go to a point where we can have another round of planning grants for another entry point. And the proposition that's out there is to have the opportunity for planning grants this year, but then also build in to the budget planning grants next year to implementation, so that the more the pathway in is regularized, the easier it is to start creating these types of opportunities on a more consistent basis.
I'm curious about a technicality, sorry, in terms of how the funding flows. So the CPPI funds are used to fund the community classrooms, and that I was interested in reading that you are using ESSER funds too for some of your classrooms, but you're using CPPI funds also to enhance your existing district classrooms as well?
So not necessarily. So we use the CPPI funds to support the tuition reimbursements and the staff boosting to the partners, but not obviously Salem Public School classrooms. And some of the funds were used to purchase materials for CPPI classrooms where we used ESSER for our classrooms. And so we use stipends from CPPI for the partners. We use stipend money from district funds for our classrooms.
I'm thinking those ESSER funds, like thinking of one of the challenges that you mentioned, is that, perhaps an opportunity to invite other community partners too into it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is you have to have some seed money to get it started, and the ESSER funds provided that boost for us, even though we actually didn't realize the return because of where our enrollment had dropped so much. But that's another story specific to Salem. But it did give us the chance to boost up all our classrooms. Before we even had CPPI, we were using ESSER to help subsidize some of the community partners. And it really was the catalyst that got this all started. Then we leveraged that to then apply for CPPI that gave us additional funds to support the partners. And now we have an infrastructure that we can build from that's a mixed delivery. So it was a blend of using ESSER and CPPI to get us to where we are. And I think ultimately we just want it to be universal. I think we're getting close just because we only serve 60 some odd percent or 50 some odd percent of the students. Not every parent's going to choose one of the choices. They may want to continue to go to their private. I just want to make sure that every parent who wants a free seat, and a full day seat, a full year seat has that. I think that's the other thing I'd stress is I really want to think about full day, full year. That's what families really need. And that's where it's a little disjointed right now. Some of the programs do provide that. That's why the community partners are so important. But almost every family that we talk to needs full year, full day, and also transportation.
Superintendent,
Transportation is a big thing.
when you say full day, full year, can you say what you mean by that?
Yeah, full day is till 5 o'clock minimum. It could be 6 o'clock. Full year is vacations, summer. It's not just the school year. schedule. I mean, this is what families tell us, and the families that don't need that, the majority of our families of color are low-income families in particular. They need they need all of it, and transportation in Salem is a huge issue, and many families need transportation, and we don't provide transportation. We have enough challenges getting everybody else to school on the yellow buses, but many of the 4-year-old, that's why, again, the community partners are so important, because they are in the communities where our families live. They're closer. So many of them provide transportation to our families as well, which is a huge piece of this. So all of those things have to be considered when we're looking at creating a universal. I just don't want any family to be left out around what they need to be able to go to work, to be able to provide a quality childcare for their children.
And those are some of the decisions that families have to make, and they think about, or they sometimes forget about too. If they choose a seat in the schools, it's like, okay, well, I might need transportation, or, we have families that have a subsidy, and we were able to offer through the grant, families that didn't qualify for a subsidy, private pay families, so we gave them, we were able to give them a seat in our program through this, through the grant. We had a few private pay families, so.
Yeah. I'd also just point out too, like, we receive kids every day, like, especially we're seeing migrant families all the time. They desperately need childcare. I find we run into so many families, they don't even know that we offer programs. We've got to get better at getting the message, and then we have to be more nimble, right? They can come at any time, and how do they know, where can they find a seat? There's got to be a seat for them. And so whether we're reserving seats in the schools, whether community partners, that are free seats, for them, and provide them with the care they need. We've got to be nimble, and that is for places like Salem. I think the whole state is seeing, obviously, families arrive at all times, so we have to, that's got to be a consideration in the model as well, is we know families are going to move in at any time, and just like we do in the public schools, we should be ready to receive them and make sure that we can connect them to a seat that can benefit them.
And I think one of the benefits of the mixed delivery system and partnering is, you mentioned the Welcome Center, like that
That's
navigation, like if you meet
That's
with a
right.
family that says, I need transportation, I need till 5:30, you may say, well, the school isn't for you.
That's right. Right.
But
That's right.
Ashley's is.
That's
or
right.
the YMCA, like,
That's right.
that is power, that to me just makes it, if we can ever get to that place, like, that's powerful.
That single point of entry.
That's right.
Where there's not someone that's connected to the school district, but like an impartial party that's running that, but can pair
Yeah.
families up with programs that match
In
their
the schools
needs.
being open-minded enough, or a provider to say, like, that actually doesn't work for that that family.
right.
Yeah.
Right,
we
and that's
do
okay.
that informally
Yeah, yeah,
now with each other.
yeah.
We're like, ooh, this is probably not going to work for
Yeah.
you, and then we do send them
That's great.
to the partners or vice versa. But it could be much better coordinated and more systemic. I mean, if you come into the city of Salem, you've got to figure out, like, who do I call? I'm calling this one, I'm calling that. It can be very cumbersome and daunting and overwhelming.
I just have a quick, beyond the funding that you mentioned was kind of a boost to this, like, there does seem to be, whether it's through the children's cabinet or the partners here, like, there seems to be a kind of a community focus on this particular topic. Can you guys point to anything that kind of has been driving that? Is it political? Is it because the mayor's involved? Like, just trying to figure out, like, there seems just to be a lot of, like, alignment on this, which is really impressive.
I'll just say this. I think a lot of K-12 systems are scared of this space, right? And I'm not sure, like, school, I would just say school leaders often, like principals, they don't know what to do with 3 and 4-year-olds, right? And I have to say, one of the best things that ever happened to me is when I was a principal in Boston Public Schools, they said, you're taking a K-1 classroom, you're taking and I said, what do you mean this was 20 years ago. And then they made me go through training on what it meant to and I was like, I didn't get into the business to work with 3 and 4-year-olds, but I was trained and to do that work. And I think the reason it's working is there's belief in this across the city that this is important, but I also think there's just a willingness of folks who the conversations that were happening, prior to my arrival with the Children's Cabinet that saw this as a mechanism to improve the educational system. There was so much momentum coming from, I guess, I blame the lieutenant governor for some of that. I blame, I blame school leaders who, we have Leanne was a former elementary principal who kept saying to me, my heart is in pre-K, is in early childhood, right? So, we are also fortunate to have really strong community partners here who were already engaged with the city. There wasn't, while the relationship isn't perfect, there wasn't an adversarial relationship between these community partners. So I think a lot of it's just the mindset that has existed
Yeah,
over
you can see
time,
it, yeah.
right? To make this happen, and that we're all aligned that this is this is as important as anything we do in the city. If we're going to improve K-12 outcomes in Salem Public Schools, this we see as a huge lever in doing that. Big part of our theory of action is that this matters almost as much as anything else.
That's great. Mm-hmm.
But I think it's just jumping in as the principal of the Early Childhood Center, being involved with the district leadership and Dr. Zrike's principal's cabinet and being brought into everything K through 12 has, for the first time, really put the pre-K doing the work that the rest of the school district is doing. And Manny Cruz mentioned MCAS, not that it's the be-all to end-all, but it's important, and that's what we're all sort of working towards. But we're talking about it here at the Early Childhood Center because I'm talking about it there in the meetings that I'm at. So I think that has really boosted the awareness of the importance of the work happening.
And that was almost a question I had asked earlier. Like, it's a partnership now. We're at the table. We're at it isn't, them and them. It's together. And I think that's where the whole sector is moving, right? And how to embrace that change in a really positive way to improve outcomes and quality for kids. It's great.
I do
Thank
think
you.
there's a spirit of risk-taking, too,
Yeah.
in Salem. That we're kind of a little rebellious and not afraid to jump in. I remember early on, kind of talking to the partners and, everyone was like, oh, a little and then we were like, okay, well, we'll give it a try. What's it going to hurt, right? Let's give it a try. I do think that the children's cabinet, after the City Connects piece and then squarely focusing, they situated on early education as a focus area. And, these are people who understand the research around how important those, high quality early education experiences are for children, and sort of galvanized around that, and that just kind of spread. And for us, I think it was a lot of timing too. Like the CPPI grant, we didn't, I'm almost kind of glad we didn't get the early ones because it forced us to do some hard work before we got the resources that we probably wouldn't have been successful with because we didn't have the partnerships and the infrastructure. So some of it's a spirit of risk-taking, some smart people around the table early on that understand the research, willingness to take some risks, and good timing.
And good leadership.
Well, and one other thing I just say, and this is maybe this won't be well received by maybe Desi, I don't know, but sometimes the incentives aren't always there to pay attention to this because people are really focused on the MCAS grades, right? And I do think there's got to be some, if you want school systems to be, K-12 systems to be focused on this work, it does require a lot of time, energy, and focus that might be diverted from other places. And people have to be okay with that aspect of it, where everybody's hyper-focused on their accountability metrics, which, let's face it, your 4-year-olds don't really have any impact. Well, in the moment they don't, but they will have tremendous impact.
When these guys get to 4th grade.
That's right, exactly right. And so, but people pay attention to what the accountability, the accountability metrics are. And I think that's an important piece, is the messaging that comes from the department too about what people should be paying attention to. I think more people would pay attention to it if they understood the long-term impacts and that the incentives were there, so that you weren't sanctioned for the fact that as a school system you might put more of your energy, which we did. We have over the last few years on this early childhood space. So thank you.
And I think too, K-12, we hear K-12, we're a pre-K-12 district. And so I often we're like, oh, K-12. I'm like, no, pre-K-12.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
Like always like putting that back just to, because it is a somewhat of a forgotten cohort of kids. So we tend to think K-5,
And
K-12.
this is some of the language change we all need to take,
Right.
right? Like, this
Yeah.
is just, we're just domesticated to think a certain way.
Yeah.
I mean,
And like-
we're posting positions now, we're just hiring for a director of, what would have been K-5. It's a pre-K to 5 position, and it's posted as such too. So to Shawna's point, it's like, we're not a K-12 system anymore, we're a pre-K 12
Great.
system.
I know the board, we have one more quick agenda item. Any other questions for the,
Can I just say just how much I appreciate and am in awe of this story? It is one of the rarest examples of community collaboration, commitment, quality, and just hearing how much, even almost implicit in what you're saying, you're bringing all of the collective assets of early childhood, of parental engagement, of knowing your communities, of teaching and learning, like in one space. I'm sure it's really hard behind the scenes, and it's never always sunny like it sounds to us, but I just want to express my gratitude for providing some optimism and inspiration. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.